Good afternoon, sir. My periodical examination lab rep is entitled The Physics of Feeding Frenzy 2's Gravity and How Real Is It? So for the introduction, gravity is a natural phenomenon wherein all things are pulled to one another's centers. A very common example of gravitational relationship is us and the planet Earth. A very common example of this gravitational relationship between us and the Earth is the simple act of jumping, where we push ourselves upward, and due to the gravitational relationship between us and the Earth pulls us toward its center, which is the ground, into the ground. So for the game that I will be analyzing, which is Feeding Frenzy 2, it is a computer game released in 2006 by PopCop Games. And the game is a grow and survive type of game where you act or play as a fish. A fish that eats smaller fishes to grow, and in order to grow very large, you must also avoid larger fishes that eat you. A very special or unique feature of the game is the jumping mechanic, where in some levels, you as your character can jump out of the water. So since there is jumping, then there must also be gravity involved. So the act of jumping in game prompted the proponent to evaluate the presence of gravity and its value compared to the real world value of g, or the acceleration due to gravity. The proponent also analyzed if Layla, which is the name of the fish that you will be playing as in this level, agreed to the free fall equations by using the experimental value of g. This experiment was done by using the game tracker application, a screen recorder, and a calculator. So for the materials and methods, the proponent, just like I said earlier, used a tracker application in the computer with the game, and a Bandicam screen recorder in doing the experiment. The proponent went to the level where there is a jumping feature available, which is level 15 Balloon Bonanza in the game, and turned on the screen recorder. So the proponent then made Layla to jump vertically by positioning Layla on the surface of the water and touching or pressing the left mouse button without moving the mouse. This is to ensure that Layla would jump perfectly vertically, and if the mouse is moved, then there will be an angle for where she will jump. After doing the jump, the video record was saved and then imported to the tracker application. In working the scale for the application, the proponent assumed that Layla is a mature queen triggerfish, since the level was between her root, where she was growing her size. So she must have been a mature fish already. According to fishbase.de, the average length of a queen triggerfish from the tip of her tail to the tip of her nose is 30 centimeters or 0.3 meters. The proponent then looked for a frame where Layla is outstretched and then made a scale measuring Layla's outstretched body from the tip of her tail to the tip of her nose. The scale was then set to 0.3 meters. And then a point mass was made to track Layla's nose's tip before she jumped and before she landed on the water as she jumped. Then the frame skip was set to 1, so there will be an accuracy in the tracking. Another point was then created to act as Layla's reference point, since the screen of the game moves as the fishes move. Then the reference point used was a barnacle, which was positioned parallel to Layla's nose tip in the starting point as she jumped. Then this point mass was then tracked as with the same timestamp when Layla was being tracked. So each point of Layla's nose tip has a specific reference point, which is the barnacle, so that there would be a constant reference frame between the values of the trap. So the Y position time graph of Layla's nose's movement was then analyzed to produce a parabolic curve of best fit. Then the second derivative of the function was then determined to find the acceleration of Layla's nose, which is equal to the in-game value of g. So for the results, so this is the tracker application screenshot with the game video imported. Then this was the making of the scale using Leila's assumed length, which is 0.3 meters. Then this was the vertical position time graph of Leila's track movement of her nose. Then this was the making of the best fit curve to be the function of her position versus time. So the function of the best fit curve to Leila's movement was y is equals to negative 2.487 x squared plus 1.567x to the power of 2 minus 0.002470, where y is equals to Leila's vertical position and x equals to the time. So to find the acceleration due to gravity, the second derivative of the function was determined, and it was determined as negative 4.974 meters per second squared, wherein the negative sign says that the acceleration was pointed downwards, which is also parallel in real life acceleration due to gravity. So the real world values of g was 9.81 meters per second squared, pointing downward. The percent difference between the two values of g was 65.23%. This suggested that the value of g in game was not realistic and is far from reality. The proponent then applied the in-game value of g by equating the initial velocity of Leila and their final velocity before landing in the water. So to prove if in-game it follows the laws of free fall, wherein the initial velocity of a jump perfectly vertical must also be equal to its final velocity before landing in the ground. So the free fall equation used was the velocity final equals to velocity initial plus acceleration due to gravity times time, and then the proponent was able to determine the initial velocity and the final velocity of Leila. So the calculated initial velocity was 1.6563 meters per second, while her calculated final velocity was 2.9844 meters per second. The percent difference between the two values was found to be 57.23%. This suggested that the game does not follow the laws of free fall, and then there must be a violation to the assumptions of the equation of free fall, which is air resistance. So the proponent concluded that there must be a presence of air resistance in game, since the use of free fall equations did not equate the two values, which is the initial velocity and the final velocity. So the value of gravity in game was not close to reality, but the presence of air resistance may be the thing that game parallel is to the real world. So for our references, and then thank you for listening. So.